Have you ever been picked on or made to feel uncomfortable about your choice of clothing to school? I can personally attest that I have. Everyone that I have asked said that at one point or another they have been in a position of ridicule about their clothing choices to school. This ridicule can lead to everlasting scars on our self-esteem. Private schools have long been known for requiring school uniforms, and now many public schools are debating whether they should institute a policy of school uniforms as well. Some people argue that requiring students to dress a certain way takes away their sense of individuality and creativity. However, there are many arguments in favor of requiring school uniforms. I firmly believe that elementary schools should adopt a mandatory school uniform policy, as this promotes enhanced school pride and unity, decreased bullying and peer pressure, decreased behavioral problems. It promotes increased attention to classroom activities, and it helps students evaluate who they are on the inside, not who they are by their clothing choices. We need school uniforms because we have an ever-increasing problem in our schools, from bullying and theft of valuable articles of clothing to our youth sporting gang colors and insignia. Instituting a policy of school uniforms would solve many of our issues that the public schools are currently facing that detract from student performance and learning. Some great benefits would include that uniforms promote increased attention in the classroom. Uniforms encourage students to take their responsibilities more seriously, as students will no longer pay as much attention to their clothing, and this attention then can be diverted to what is going on in the classroom. Uniforms also allow the administration to enforce a standard dress code more easily. Standardized uniforms promote an increased sense of school pride and unity. A 2000 study from Oxford Brookes University in the United Kingdom found that uniforms often directly contribute to a feeling of school pride. The peer review of this 2007 study also found that required uniforms were introduced. Students perceived an increase in the levels of respect, caring, and trust throughout the school, and students were made to feel important and as if they were part of a team by wearing a uniform. Uniforms decrease bullying, peer pressure, and behavioral problems. Not only is teasing decreased, but violence can be prevented in schools that require a school uniform. As seen in this chart by Oxford Brookes University, where blue represents before school uniforms were introduced and red represents after school uniforms were introduced, there is a dramatic decrease in the amount of crimes that were reported after school uniforms were enforced. Gang violence has become an ever-prevalent problem at schools around our country. And sometimes fights can start over when someone wears the wrong color or if they display a certain gang's insignia. By instituting a uniform policy, this issue can be completely eliminated. When all students are dressed alike, competition between students over clothing choices and bullying of those who are dressed in the less fashionable attire can be completely eliminated. School uniforms also reduce the chance of outsiders being able to come into the schools undetected. Uniforms help students learn to evaluate themselves by who they are on the inside, not by what clothing they wear on the outside. Former President Bill Clinton stated, "If it means that schoolrooms will be more orderly, more disciplined, and that our young people will learn to evaluate themselves by what they are on the inside instead of what they're wearing on the outside, then our public schools should be able to require their students to wear school uniforms." So many of you might be asking yourself, so what? Issues regarding student clothing and associated problems continue to rise in our public schools. If we continue to ignore this issue, we are doing a great injustice to our students. This problem can be easily fixed by requiring students to wear a standardized school uniform. This solution only involves making changes to our existing school dress code, which personally is significantly lacking. Requiring a school uniform promotes school safety, it improves the learning environment, and it diminishes clothing competition and bullying. A 2-year study at Oxford Brookes of mandatory student uniforms showed a 28% drop in elementary suspension rates, a 51% drop in fights in grades kindergarten through 8, and a 34% decrease in assault and battery charges at the elementary and middle school levels. So what can we expect once school uniforms are instituted? Just imagine walking down a school hallway and seeing a unified group of students who are neatly dressed. They are not picking on or bullying others for what they wore to school that day, but instead are discussing activities that they learned in the classrooms. You take a quick peek into a classroom and you see students focusing on their classwork, not on each other's shoes or what sports team jersey they wore that day. You no longer see visualized displays of gang colors or gang insignia. And all students are now on an even playing field when it comes to their clothing. We need to make a change for the better for our students. And one way we can achieve this is by instituting a mandatory school uniform policy for our elementary students. Uniforms create an atmosphere of school pride and unity. They help eliminate bullying and peer pressure by diminishing clothing competition. They promote safety by eliminating gang colors and gang insignia. This can promote increased attention to the classroom activities, and they help students evaluate who they are, not what they wear. So I ask you today to join me and support the movement of change and support the effort to get school uniforms as a mandatory requirement for the elementary students at Denver Public Schools.